Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back to the channel. Hey, this is going to be my first GME video, but it's not going to be the type of GME video that you may want to see because I'm going to use GME as an example for my own purposes, all right? And by the way, I'm doing this completely on the fly, all right? I just randomly pulled up this chart and was like, you know why? Because I've been hearing a bunch of people say, it's a squeeze play. All this Wyckoff and technical analysis, it doesn't matter. For AMC related videos. If you're new to the channel, I usually cover AMC on my day-to-day, but I just want to cover this GME. And listen, I didn't even prepare for this video. I can do this simple, easy, and show you guys that technicals and Wyckoff play a role in every single play. So if you're not familiar with any of these things that I'm talking about, technical analysis, Wyckoff accumulation or distribution, etc., basically Wyckoff, because I know that maybe I'll get new viewers as a result of this video, basically Wyckoff is a study, and I'm going to pull up an example of a chart here, is a study of how institutions trade assets. Basically, it's a way for institutions to excite retail when it's convenient for them, and then demoralize retail when it's convenient for them in an effort to accumulate and distribute shares. You can see this example here of a Wyckoff price cycle where you have an accumulation and a distribution. This is what the ebbs and the flows of most of the market comes down to: institutions trading assets, causing short-term rallies and short-term sell-offs from retail traders. And I'll show you even more specific versions of this chart in a second, and give you examples. A big example here with GME, because GME is the shining example, as a matter of fact, of a squeeze play in recent history, right? GME is really the leader of the meme stocks. It was the one that started this meme stock revolution. I think most people would agree with me on that. So let's take a look. Now, what I want you to notice is that this chart that I'm showing you right now is from March of 2019 and extends. We're gonna obviously look at more and more of the chart, but I just want to focus on this part of the chart for now. September 2020. This is the part of the chart that we want to focus on. Okay, so remember, March of 2019, okay? There were no pandemic fears. Nothing like that was going on, right? In March of 2019. I don't remember any pandemic fears at that time. Let me know in the comments if you do. All the way to October 2020, and this is just going to be our example, and then we'll move forward in the chart. We'll do it in real time. Because, again, I didn't prepare anything for this video. I just looked at the chart, and I was like, wow, beautiful. All right. So, what you have here is this schematic, okay? Schematic 1. This was developed by Richard Wyckoff. This is just an example of the trading strategy developed by Richard Wyckoff, who passed away, I believe, in the 1920s. Let's take a look. 1934, sorry. Right after the Great Depression. So, I say that to say this may or may not continue to have relevance. What I would say here, just looking at the chart broadly, is that you have a primary sell-off here, preliminary support, etc., etc. Actually, you know what? Perhaps we'll draw it here because it's going to end up becoming your resistance. We can talk about the past of GME too if you guys want to, but maybe we'll save that for another video. Oh no, I dragged my volume. I hate when I do this. I like my volume right there. Okay. Preliminary support. Selling climax, which is a high volume sell-off, which is a signal that institutions could be accumulating. Could begin an accumulation, okay? Now remember the time frames we talked about. Let's go to a shorter time frame so that I can see a little bit more detail in the chart. Sorry. So then you have your automatic reaction to this. Automatic rally, automatic reaction. Then you have a sell test. I'd say this is just a sell test in phase B down here, where basically you break the bottom of the trading range like you see here. And this actually creates the bottom of your trading range. And maybe you would even say that this is your sell climax. But it kind of fractalizes itself within itself. So, and it doesn't have to follow the schematic exactly. This one just happens to be a pretty good one. So this is a phase B distribution is what I call it. And basically on the schematic, you can see here that you have this sort of pump up phase where you have this short-term distributive kind of, you keep on rallying the price to get retail back in the game, right? And what that ends up looking like a lot of times is a distribution. And if you want to, we can break that down. But what's funny about this is this distribution right here that lasted from, say, September 2019 through January 2020, February 2020. Wow, look at where it ends up. That's interesting. Oh, look. It's the COVID sell. Okay. That's weird because this looks like the Bitcoin chart to start 2021, which we've talked about on the channel a few times. You can literally look at any Bitcoin chart. So this is that Bitcoin chart dating from like February, or really it's January 2021 through May 2021. I'm sure you guys remember that big crypto dump that happened right before AMC had its gamma in June. That looks a lot like this, doesn't it? Very, very similar. Almost like so then now remember, this is the accumulation, okay? It's a larger accumulation schematic. And again, I'm doing this in real time, but this almost looks exactly the same. Look at the distribution, boom, and then you have this little fake rally up here, and then back down, another rally, right, like this. See how it happens there, and then you have your spring phase, or this is probably more like a terminal. Oh no, it looks like a spring, really low volume, nice spring here, April 2020. Now this is when some concerns were happening. I remember. March, April was kind of the key phase of, COVID panic was the big narrative at that time. You guys remember. You bounce up here. I think you might have your spring phase. Boom, you bounced right up. And then you have, so this is kind of like a shorter term SOS. But really it turns into a last point of support on the macro, okay, where you come back, you test a key support range. So you can draw like a horizontal line here, and you can see that this is a good zone where resistance and support has happened. You see this support here, you see this resistance here, resistance until eventual support, and then eventually once it broke here, it kind of went off to the races to the bottom here, all the way down to $2.58. You bounce right back up, get out of hell, and then you have your last point of support. And all of these obviously are good horizontal levels probably. So this is almost acting like a distribution. Like this would be more like I'd say it's more like the other distribution schematic. Sorry, I scrolled the wrong way. And by the way, the purpose of this video is not to be like arrogant or anything like that. I'm literally just trying to show people, it's important that we don't just discount things because they're not convenient for our narratives. Because remember what I'm doing here. I am looking at GME's chart. Do you think that this was happening? Again, remember what the schematic is called. It's accumulation. Okay, and a big argument for this for this movement is that it's controlled by retail. But I would argue that this could, I don't know, this could be taken as maybe retail was a little bit behind in if you look at it from this perspective, It seems like maybe institutions, because I don't think retail in any form of coordinated trading could pull off this schematic from June of 2019 to here, right? So then you have, I'm gonna stop talking now. You have your primary like SOS phase where you break above the trading range here. This was in August to September of 2020, which is basically, look, you can define SOS here. Sign of strength, a price advance on increasing spread and relatively higher volume. You see the volume increasing. Often an SOS takes place after a spring, which it did here, validating the analyst's interpretation of that prior action. So basically, this was a confirmation that you have where you break above the trading range on this high price spread, right? High volume happens, and then a shorter term, it's really interesting. You know, if I zoomed into this, I know I hate how TradingView sends me to the front of the chart every time I do this, but bear with me. If you look at shorter time frames, look, this SOS at the end of it, it actually turns into another distribution. Boom, you have a sell-off. And if you zoomed in here, you'd probably see some accumulation. Let's see. I don't know if I can go back that far on the 30-minute chart, but I'll try just for fun. Just having a little fun here now. Yeah, so, you know, obviously you're gapping a little bit. Things are getting a little wonky at this point. But if you go down to the 1-minute chart, because this happened pretty fast. This happened in the course of, let's go to 5-minute. I like the 5-minute chart these days. Hopefully I can see it. Bear with me. Sorry. Oh no, it doesn't go back that far. Sorry. But yeah, so you have like a short-term accumulation occur in this backup phase, which, you know, also behaves as an LPS, last point of support, right? You come back, you test the prior. Remember, we drew like the top of the trading range. You come back, you test. It didn't exactly test it, but think of it more like an order block, like Jen Collado talks about in his videos. Oh, look, I mean, you know, it's pretty close here. And then you have your markup phase, right? So you just break up, oop, markup, macro markup phase. So this was October of 2020. And then you can see here, after this markup, you have a distribution followed by another tiny accumulation pattern. Let me pull up that schematic again so you can see it. Sometimes you don't have that spring that breaks the bottom of the trading range. Like you have this phase C, last point of support that happens. Boom, pretty clear accumulation occurring there. You come back for your backup phase. A little accumulation happens here, distribution, accumulation, and then this was January, right? So then you'll say, well, David, this looks like distribution. So what's really important in Wyckoff is to analyze volume. Volume is a very important part of this. And you can see that here, the selling effort was much less than the buying effort. And again, this could be covering that's causing this, but I don't think that this actually becomes a reaccumulation. So it behaves like an accumulation on top of a larger swing up. And there's a schematic out there for it. I'll bring it up for you briefly. It's pretty easy to find if you just look at you just Google reaccumulation schematic. You'll find it pretty easily. I just wanted to. I'll bring it up here. So here you can see. You know, full breakdown, right? January 13, it sees, oh, wow, look at all this volume. So basically, you cause this sell-off, this volume, this sell-off, right? You have a buying climax. And again, it doesn't have to be exactly like the schematic. It's just the idea behind the move, right? Like a sell test. I mean, this one pretty much looks like the bread and butter schematic, though. It's not far off. Let's see. You have a creek here. And then you jump across it. So just what that looks like briefly, you draw like this downtrend. Boom, you break across that, and almost acts like like your spring or LPS phase. This is kind of like a more angular reaccumulation that's occurring here. You draw it like this, right? And you got that supportive volume. Once you came back down here, boom, you can see that bulls came right in. And supported it. This ended up being your LPS. Now, to me, right, looking at this chart, and I can continue to break this down if you want. I mean, I can go further and further into this, but this pretty clearly looks like a distribution. Probably another reaccumulation that occurs here. There's a few different reaccumulation schematics and accumulation schematics that you can find around on the internet. And then when GME was at its eventual top, you see here, right? This almost looks like a distribution phase, doesn't it? So, and this would be the other phase B upthrust distribution phase. So you can see here, PSY, which is your preliminary supply, buying climax, and an exhaustive effort to the upside here. You have an automatic reaction. Then, forgive me, I'm literally winging this right now, doing it in real time. So just give me a second. So you can see a sell test here. So this establishes your the top of your trading range, right? Draw that, and then you add a sign of weakness in phase B here, which establishes the bottom of your trading range. I'm not going to draw it super accurately. I guess you could say, let's see. Yeah, maybe this actually was the buying climax. This was pre-market, so the volume's all wonky on it. So again, forgive me, I'm literally doing this in real time. So maybe this becomes the bottom of your trading range, and this was actually an automatic reaction. But you get the idea. I mean, it's not, maybe this is your UTAD instead. Maybe you did have an upthrust after distribution, and this was actually the dump from the buy button collapse. Price fought its way back up here. Yeah, I mean, I like the upthrust in phase B. Again, it doesn't have to exactly match the schematic. These are all just different elements of the same kind of idea, where institutions are keeping retail in the game, keeping retail excited while they're dumping their shares. So again, I know that this video, I might get a little bit of feedback for this video here, but I just want to show you guys, again, I'm totally winging this. I'm not even spending time fully analyzing this, and you can clearly see, right, that Wyckoff patterns have played a huge role just in the history of GME, right? And I'm sure that now, maybe, if you're feeling a little bit more familiar with it, you're seeing here that this almost behaved as an accumulation phase. You zoom in here, I'm sure this looks much more like this distribution phase that I've been showing you. Another accumulation, distribution. So, and there's more macro analytics that we can perform on this and try and get a better idea of where GME stands in the grand scheme of things, because I mean, to me, this probably looks like a reaccumulation, but I'd have to do a much more in-depth analysis. I don't want to just wing it on that and tell you guys that this thing's going to the moon or whatever, because I don't know, because I haven't analyzed it enough. But I just wanted to just kind of roughly show you guys, it's a little bit easier to tell sometimes after the fact, but, this is clearly something that was, at least some institutions, right, were planning to be a part of whatever GME had in the future. Could they have planned the squeeze that went up to $500 or whatever? I don't know that with 100% certainty. I'm not here to spread conspiracy or anything like that. But to me, it's pretty clear that institutions had an interest in GME from April 2019, a long interest, I should say, all the way up until, its eventual squeeze up. So obviously this is a much more in-depth sort of crazy sort of video that's probably going to get me a lot of, again, I'm probably going to get a lot of negative feedback as a result of this, but you can see here that Fibonacci levels were very well traded, like we've talked about, and probably if you take the log scale off, it kind of actually, it kind of just hung just like AMC after the buy button kind of did the same thing where it had this like fib range and it just kind of hung above it. And I mean, you can see here if you draw it from like a different point. There you go. So it lands on this 0.5 Fibonacci. So you could use Fibonacci to at least get some idea of where the drop would have eventually ended. If you want to localize it to like, okay, let's just do it from where the rally exactly started. You can see here that it pretty much nailed the what's that, the 786 on its drop down. So even as unpredictable as something like the buy button collapse, you can see that it was finding support at its 618, finding support at the 707 before eventually going all the way down to the 786 and then sending itself up. You can see that it gets resistance, support, support. So yeah, I think that, you know, this video should be a pretty good video to send anybody. At least for my purposes, whenever people are always saying, hey, you know, TA doesn't matter. This is a squeeze play. You know, I hate to break it to you, if we put it that way, but I disagree. I think that technical analysis is a tool of institutions, and they use it, especially Wyckoff trading methods, for sure. They use to get larger positions and things that they want to send to higher prices, and then get progressively smaller and smaller positions. And the idea is, right, like if they just bought as many shares as they wanted of GME at one time, it would just skyrocket the price. But if they slowly cause these sell-offs and then they buy, and they cause more sell-offs, and then they buy, and then they buy, and then they cause more sell-offs, then they can get more shares without the shares being so expensive. And the same thing goes for distribution. If they just sold their entire position right away, the value of those last shares would be much less, and if they were to cause this sort of up and down sort of thing where they keep retail in the game, keep retail excited, oh, we're going to the moon, and then they just sell off in order to get as much of it off of their balance sheet for as high a value as possible, right? So that's the idea behind Wyckoff. Hopefully this video was educational to you. Hopefully you gained something from it. If you did, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. It really helps the channel out. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are on this, how much you hate me. I'm sure that I'll get a few dislikes for this, but it's totally fine. But yeah, and I'm sorry if I said too many times, but guess what? It's a tick, and I don't have a speech coach, so maybe I'll get one day. All right, guys. Have a good rest of your day. I'm going to post that AMC video as well today. I don't know if this one's going to come out first or that one or whatever, but all right. Take it easy.